Hey authors, not to freak you out, but what if that bad thing comes to pass? Could you be okay anyway? I'm Claire Taylor, and I'm going to prove to you that no matter what happens, you can continue to be a writer. Welcome back to another episode of What If for Authors. I'm glad you're here. My name's Claire Taylor, and I'm an Enneagram certified coach for authors, as well as a humor and mystery writer. My latest book, Sustain Your Author Career, is all about how to root out the unsustainable practices in our writing life and how to spot the right opportunities for us when they come along. Check it out by going to ffs.media/sustain. Today, we are tackling quite a big subject. Honestly, I probably should have narrowed it down a bit, but whatever, let's give it a shot. Today, we're going to ask the super important question that I hear behind authors' words more than I hear directly in their words, and that is, what if I don't feel safe? Big question, right? But it seems like a relevant one, topical one, an important one for sure. There are different kinds of safety that we seek: emotional safety, physical safety, intellectual safety, and spiritual safety. All of these are crucial to well-being, and none of them are all or nothing, which is important to note. They work on sort of a sliding scale, moment to moment, person to person. Physical safety is the one we're probably the most familiar with. That's just, is my body safe? Most of the time, I feel like my body is safe. Sitting at my desk, I mostly feel like my body is safe, but things can influence that. So say I'm sitting at my desk watching a video of a car crash. It's likely that while my body is safe in my chair, my ability to empathize means that my body is relating to what's happening to the bodies on the screen. So my body might not know it's safe, resulting in increased heart rate, tense muscles, adrenaline, changes in my circulation, possibly even a little bit of tunnel vision, certainly tunnel vision with where my attention is going. Is my body safe, and does my body know it's safe are two different questions. And we'll talk about that more in just a bit. So trauma is another thing that can keep our body from feeling safe when it's actually in quite the safe physical environment. This is why it's important for us to learn about trauma and begin to recognize it in ourselves and seek the help and support that we need. A lot of people I've talked to have experienced relief through EMDR and somatic therapy, so those might be things to look into if you're interested in helping your body connect to its present physical safety levels more accurately, rather than being caught in the past. If you are not physically safe in your own home, perhaps it's time to do what you can to change that, maybe start making a plan. But sometimes there's not much we can do about it. For instance, my home right now feels very safe to me. I feel physically safe inside of it. I trust my neighbors. I don't worry about crime too much, and my partner tops my list of people least likely to want to harm me. So that's a benefit of being married to a 9, but also just a decent human being. But I have lived in homes where I did not feel safe at all. I lived in an apartment in a really high crime neighborhood, and it had this sliding glass door connecting my bedroom to the stairwell. So yeah, never felt fully safe going to bed there. I also rented a room from a much older man who started sneaking into my room while I wasn't home, going through my private things, and then kind of sulking about me spending time with my boyfriend instead of him. He also had an insane ex-wife with a key to the house who would just kind of show up and hang around. When I moved in, I thought the other woman renting a room was insane because she'd added 3 padlocks to the inside of her bedroom door. Turns out she was very sane. I was naive. So in both of those situations, I was too poor to leave for a long while. I understand it can be difficult to reposition yourself financially when you don't feel physically safe. It's worth a try, though. But if you can't change the big things like moving to a safer situation right away, there are still smaller steps you can take, which I'll talk about more in a bit. Emotional safety is just as important for our ability to function as creatives. Emotional safety looks like having people around you who are able to receive the good, the bad, and the ugly from you without judging or rejecting you. Notice it's not just the bad and the ugly, it's the good too. It's not uncommon to have a friend who is happy to hear about it when you're down, but who prickles when you share something positive. So be sure to watch out for that too. Emotional safety is also about feeling safe within yourself to experience the wide range of possible emotions. This part of emotional safety is often overlooked. So, what don't you feel comfortable allowing yourself to feel? When those taboo emotions come up, you'll feel unsafe and unsettled if you don't learn to experience them. And you might not know why you feel that way. It'll just be harder to focus on things. Intellectual safety looks like feeling safe to not have the answers yet. You feel comfortable saying, I don't know, which is what allows you to stay curious. We can only be curious about things we don't already think we know. And curiosity is a gateway to creativity. They both begin with, I wonder. If you don't feel intellectually safe, it negatively affects your ability to be creative. Just like with emotional safety, intellectual safety is also a matter of both internal and external conditions. Do you surround yourself with people with whom you feel safe being honest about your lack of knowledge? Do you feel okay saying something dumb in front of them from time to time or admitting you were wrong without them judging or rejecting you? And do you feel safe admitting to yourself that you don't know something or might be wrong? Can you do that without bringing down all the judgment and criticism on yourself? Spiritual safety is just as important as the other types. Spiritual safety isn't limited to a spiritual community, but spiritual danger is often created in organized spiritual or religious groups. When we suffer spiritual abuse, the spiritual element of our existence no longer feels safe, and we can become disconnected from it. So this includes our connection to our fellow human, our connection to our higher self, our feeling of unity with nature, and our faith in God, the universe, and everything. It's crucial that we check in with our levels of spiritual safety. If your spiritual community doesn't allow for questioning, you're not in a spiritually safe environment. If your community casts people out who make human mistakes rather than showing a path forward through reconciliation and compassion, while also holding you accountable for harm you may have caused to other parties, then you're not in a spiritually safe place. And similarly, if you don't give yourself the space to internally question your spiritual beliefs and maybe play around with others and offer yourself the self-compassion needed to be a human while holding yourself accountable for any harm you've caused, then you're not spiritually safe for yourself internally. I doubt that any of us are completely safe, is what I'm saying. It's really a sliding scale on these factors. You may feel physical safety and emotional safety, but not totally intellectually or spiritually safe, for instance. Those are just things to notice because our ability to write is often dependent on our degree of safety. It's an interesting exercise to run a quick audit on these areas of safety and see, what do you come up with? Bringing a little attention to it goes a long way. As authors, we will struggle to write if we can't find ways to feel safe, to meet our threshold of safety to focus. Some people might say that they're motivated to write by fear, and that can work for some people for a while, but you always run into the restriction of your fears eventually. It can't last. If you don't feel emotionally safe, your characters may feel shallow. If you don't feel intellectually safe, you'll likely get hung up on research and details. If you don't feel spiritually safe, your stories may fall flat and fail to inspire readers and stick with them after the last page. When we don't feel safe, we armor up, and that armor limits the way we can express ourselves through our stories. It limits our ability to connect to the stories in the first place, which is sometimes the source of our writer's block. Now, you may be thinking, Claire, are you telling me to only do what feels safe? No, there's a balance here. First, we must recognize where we don't feel safe. That's the first part in assessing if we're actually unsafe. Sometimes we feel unsafe, but we're not unsafe, as in the example of sitting at your desk while watching a car accident on your computer. And sometimes we feel unsafe because we have unaddressed anxieties floating around, which is why I make this podcast. You may find, for instance, that you feel emotionally unsafe writing your spicy romance. So you're running into this resistance when it comes time to write the deeply erotic parts. Then maybe you listen to my episode, What If I Disappoint My Parents? And you go, oh, you were caught in the feeling of being emotionally unsafe because in the back of your mind, you were imagining their voices in your head every time you tried to write butt stuff, which is Objectively unsexy. Will it ever be emotionally safe to talk with your parents about those erotic scenes? Maybe not. But now you have the choice to begin some practices that return you to yourself and allow you to feel safe enough to write the scenes, knowing it will probably disappoint your parents anyway. When the danger is nebulous and unnamed, it tends to take on much more space and be more disruptive. But when we can pause and name it, we can then start to bring that perceived threat back into perspective, bring our adult brains online, and make a decision about how to proceed. If we want to grow and liberate ourselves, this is the point where we choose discomfort. You don't wait around until it feels easy and comfortable to write sex scenes that your parents would disapprove of. You take that step forward despite it feeling uncomfortable. Now, there's a range to this, though, right? We don't want to make ourselves so uncomfortable that we become paralyzed with fear. But it's important to note that the people who challenge themselves don't wait until the path forward feels comfortable. They take the path when it still feels uncomfortable, while they're still wondering, am I going to regret this? And while they're still dreaming of returning to comfort and ease. They don't wait for certainty. They move ahead in uncertainty, and that will always feel uncomfortable. But it doesn't have to feel so unsafe that our minds, bodies, and hearts shut down and cease to function. It's a balance. But first, we need to name the sense of threat to our safety, put it into proportion, and remember that nothing is certain. And if we wait for certainty, we'll be waiting forever. The world has always been uncertain. I don't know that the world is any more uncertain today than it was 10 years ago, but I will say that our ability to live in the delusion of certainty has been severely hobbled lately. Things feel like they're changing quickly and not necessarily in a positive direction, but change is, of course, the only constant. The truth remains that the only thing we have ever had control over is how we treat ourselves and others. Through that control, we may influence the world around us, but we never had control over it. We never had more or less control over things than we do now. Have we had more rights granted to us by the government? Certainly. But you see that it's not the same as what we have control over. If the president passed an executive order tomorrow that banned women from driving cars, I could still get in a car and drive it. I still control my decisions in that way. Might the consequences or the outcome be different from that than they were a year ago? Yeah. But that doesn't mean that I don't still have huge control here. The things that I can control have not changed. As shitty as everything might feel right now, we're at a huge turning point. People who are able to see that we never had certainty of results and never had control over anything other than how we treat ourselves and others will be the ones to exercise that power effectively, possibly influencing the world for the better. Those who don't wake up to that reality will fall into despair and forfeit all of their power and influence for the betterment of the world. This is a turning point. The people who do the intense inner work and stay with their healthy practices will fare better than those who don't. Doing the work and sticking to practices are decisions we can all make, no matter what the external situation. As long as you are breathing, you have this option. So in that way, not much has changed. Yeah, in certain moments, it really feels like the bad guys are winning, but they want nothing more than to convince us that we no longer have control over our lives, for us to give over the power and the agency of the one thing we have, which is how we treat ourselves and others. Bringing awareness to all of this is the key. In oppressive environments, seeking certainty about our safety often means becoming complicit in the oppression. So I've noticed myself as of late thinking of relationships in different terms than usual. I generally ask myself, is this a good person? And that was kind of the basic criteria. Is this a good person? Do they not completely annoy the shit out of me? Yeah, they might be a good friend. And of course, what I consider to be a good person is so subjective. And you may see my type 1 filter coming through, but in a way that I don't necessarily see a reason to change. But lately, I've been narrowing down the pool of good people by asking if they are also safe people. And boy, does that narrow down the pool. Do I feel emotionally safe around this person? Do I feel intellectually and spiritually safe with them? Do I feel physically safe with them? I do have friends who meet all of that criteria. It's great. I love being around them. Also, do I trust them to be smart and use discretion about what they might share with others about me? Now, that's a new requirement brought about by, the shift towards a high control government. There are people who I do believe are good people and want to be good people, but who are not educated enough on how things like autocracies and authoritarians work. And so I don't believe that they are currently safe people to share things about my life with. Education brings safety. So they don't necessarily see the seismic shift in daily life yet. And so they may be unintentionally careless with important information. So, for instance, I'm married to a detective who I believe is safe with most things. But if I'm pulled over by the police, I ain't saying shit. Things are changing in the way we move outside of our homes. And even inside of our homes when it comes to cybersecurity and measures of privacy, things are changing by necessity. And this is not to make you feel unsafe, but to bring some caution. One important thing here is that I don't necessarily consider someone a safe person if they don't know how to spot safe people. That's because we are all part of a network. And I think everyone's had this experience where they have that one friend who they love with all their heart, but that friend has terrible taste in the people they hang out with. So like your friend Lauren might be respectful, but when she asks to bring her boyfriend to your party, your stomach sinks because none of the men she dates are respectful and she just doesn't see it. Part of the learning of how to spot when people are unsafe, which is a learned skill, by the way, is to do our shadow work to uncover how we are not being safe people for others. This is crucial for anyone who wants to be a good ally to others. So for instance, white women who put ally with, like the different skin tone fists or the pride flag in their online bios, they're almost always shitty allies in the end, right? It's a sign that the woman is more concerned with being seen as an ally and getting the approval of Black people or the queer community than she is actually putting herself on the line and in the line of fire when needed, as an ally does. It's the guy who calls himself a feminist without addressing his internalized entitlement to the attention and praise of women, who suddenly turns mean when he doesn't show up as an ally and a woman calls him out on it, right? Only when we do the highly unflattering work of learning about how we've been unsafe people for others and addressing that, no matter how uncomfortable it is, will we be able to recognize what safe people really look like. Making yourself safer makes you safer. When we start to root out the unsafe patterns inside of us, like entitlement, people-pleasing, perfectionism, deceit, cowardice, and envy, yes, these are all patterns that make us unsafe for ourselves and others. We start to see the world around us more clearly, and doing that allows us to feel safe more frequently. So this is very important work for you as a human, but also as a creative. Doing that work is one way to create a sense of safety for ourselves in unpredictable, uncertain, and unsafe environments, but it's not the only way. Our daily practices really, really matter here. If you have not been feeling safe lately, I would recommend you take 5 minutes toward the start of every day to close your eyes and check in with yourself. Ask yourself some questions. Just go through the kinds of safety one at a time. Where in my body do I not feel physically safe? What is making me feel physically unsafe? What of that do I have control over? And what am I trying to control that I don't have control over? Does the reality of my physical safety match up with the way I feel about it? What emotions are making me feel unsafe? Why is that? Could I feel them without becoming unsafe? What are those emotions telling me to do, and why am I not doing it? What thoughts do I feel unsafe thinking or sharing? What am I afraid will happen if I say something stupid or incorrect? How is that stopping me from contributing my perspective and knowledge? Is the threat I feel accurate to the reality of the situation? Where am I feeling spiritually unsafe? What doubts am I having that feel unsafe to entertain, even in the privacy of my own head? How might entertaining doubts be a crucial step to stronger faith rather than something dangerous and detrimental to my spiritual health? What is something I can do today that will make me feel spiritually connected? Additionally, you might ask yourself some of these questions. What action, if any, do I need to take to create safety? What media do I need to stop consuming to avoid triggering fear and insecurity about things I cannot directly control? Where might my ignorance on a subject be leading to fear, and how might I learn more about the thing to understand it and feel safer existing with it? What people do I need to set internal boundaries with or begin distancing myself from to create more safety? So if any of these questions resonates with you right now, just take that and start working with that. And then lastly, because we're authors, you can ask yourself, how might I need to reposition my business to feel safe enough to choose discomfort? Now, this might look like spending less time on social media so that you feel safer taking risks in the kinds of books that you publish. This could look like creating a separate source of income so that you're financially safe enough to take risks that may not pay off in your writing business. What level of safety do you need to create for yourself so that you can choose discomfort? This is a big question, and I hope I've offered plenty of ways to start creating that safety for yourself. So if you're wondering, what if I don't feel safe? I'll say that it's time to start checking in with yourself, learning about where you don't feel safe, and finding ways to create internal safety for yourself. External safety too, where you can. Do the scary shadow work to see where you're being unsafe for others, and you'll make yourself a safer place to be, as well as learn how to spot safe relationships. Now, just as a side note, a safe relationship doesn't mean a relationship with no conflict, no disagreement. It just means that when you are having those conflicts and disagreements, you are feeling heard, you're feeling respected, and you feel like you and the other person are working toward common ground rather than attacking each other. Feeling unsafe destroys our ability to be creative, our focus, and our decision-making skills. Every resource we have diverts to what we perceive as the danger. That's why you can't do the inner work that we talk about each episode until you address where you feel fundamentally unsafe and start to question if that's the reality or a result of trauma or a mixed up sense of what you can and cannot control. A lot of the time, simply pausing to run a diagnostic check each day on what areas of our life feel safe or not safe is a great way to take back control of our creativity and focus on beginning to make sounder decisions for our business. It takes a daily practice, though, or mostly daily, right? It's not all or nothing. If you miss a day, don't beat yourself up, just start again. Fear and liberation are at odds with one another. The better we understand that, the more motivated we'll be to create an internal sense of safety so that we can make decisions that challenge us and make us uncomfortable, but are ultimately the path toward greater liberation, success, and well-being. It's a balance, but it's worth holding that tension to reap the rewards. If you don't feel safe inside of yourself, then you have work to do. And we all have this work to do, frankly. But if you don't make yourself a relatively safe place to exist within, you'll never have the foundation you need and the retreat that you can return to that's necessary for challenging yourself to try new, uncomfortable things. So that's it for this episode of What If for Authors. Thanks for listening. And if you don't feel physically safe inside your home and it's because of another person who is living there, I hope that you'll begin to consider that it doesn't have to be that way. So the number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline in the US is 1-800-799-SAFE, SAFE, or you can text the word START to 8878. In the UK, it's 0808 2000 247. Or you can go to refuge.org.uk. If you're in another country than those, you'll likely have a free helpline as well. So be sure to use a safe device that's unlikely to be tracked and delete your browser and chat history. Libraries are very good for this sort of thing. The people who work these helplines are incredibly discreet. You don't have to know how you'll make the change. You just need to take the first step and let the experts guide you along. They know what they're doing. So this may sound quite dramatic to even mention to many of you, but statistically speaking, At least a few people listening to this episode will need those numbers. It might be you right now. If you don't feel safe with the people you live with, perhaps it's time to take that first uncomfortable step into the unknown. It might be the best first step you've ever taken. I'm Claire Taylor, and I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode of What If for Authors. Happy writing.